I used to think the worst pain in life was betrayal, but I was wrong. True pain is hearing the voice of the man I once loved more than life itself, Mark, my ex-husband, hissing through the office door, each word like a razor. Let that woman humiliate herself. She's nothing but trash, chasing a temp CEO like she's worthy of being creative director. Behind that door was the sound of labored breathing, his assistant on her knees, dress twisted, eyes glazed like a puppet. She nodded feverishly as he smirked, a cold, twisted grin I'd never seen in 7 years of sharing a bed with him. "I'm not letting this happen," he growled. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just turned away, every step on the marble floor heavier than the last. How does someone who used to be your entire world become the one who wants to erase you from his? That was nearly 3 years ago. Today, I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm Alyssa, 34, freelance interior designer. We got married when I was 27, still believing that love could patch any crack if you poured enough of yourself into it. Mark, my ex, worked in real estate investments, successful, handsome, maybe a little too distant, but I loved him with everything I had. It started on a Tuesday morning. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when Mark came downstairs and placed a stack of papers in front of me. "I think we should end this," he said. No argument, no tears, no other woman. At least, that's what I thought. I sat frozen, staring at the words "petition for dissolution of marriage" like they were etched in ice. I asked him why. He didn't answer, just repeated one line. "I'm not happy anymore." What a coward. It took me 3 months to convince myself I wasn't broken, that I wasn't unworthy. But the pain didn't come from loss. It came from being treated like garbage, like something with an expiration date. Then, one Friday night, my 3 best friends dragged me out to a tiny club on the west side of LA. "Don't you dare wear that funeral dress," Linda shouted when I walked out in a high-neck black number. They swapped it for a tight red silk dress, off-shoulder, thigh-high. I barely recognized the woman in the mirror, but I smiled. A bitter, crooked smile. Because if I didn't try to start over, what else was left? The club was loud, lights flashing violet and red to the beat of pulsing synths. I planned to have one drink, make up an excuse, and vanish. But he showed up. He stood at the bar, white shirt slightly unbuttoned, bourbon in hand. Tall, broad shoulders, eyes gray like smoke, and a smile that felt soft but infinite. "Want to dance?" he asked, voice low and warm, like aged whiskey. I nodded. Don't ask me why. I just did. He led me onto the dance floor, his hand steady at my waist. Our bodies moved together like they had always known how, like we had. Lights spilled down my bare shoulders. My hair clung to my neck with sweat. He looked at me, not with lust, not with lies, but like he could see straight through my bones. "You're beautiful," he whispered, breath warm on my skin, giving me goosebumps. "No one said that to me in a long time," I replied, emboldened by liquor and lust. "Then the men you've known were fools." I laughed. For a moment, I forgot Mark. I forgot the divorce. I was just a woman, wanted, held, and seen. But as the song ended, he leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Have a beautiful night." Then he vanished into the crowd, like a ghost in linen and bourbon. I turned, searching. Nothing. No name, no number. Just a half-empty drink and the trace of cologne in the air. Something told me that moment wasn't random. And I had no idea that just weeks later, I'd meet that man again in the worst possible way imaginable. I didn't think life could get any worse after the divorce, but turns out fate has a hell of a sense of humor. A month after that night at the club, I decided to apply for a job at Sterling and Morgan Group, a major real estate investment firm. They were hiring a design manager for a new luxury apartment project. I knew Mark worked there, but word was the company had just merged with a New York branch and leadership was shifting. I figured this was my shot. I prepped my resume meticulously, polished my portfolio until it gleamed. It felt like I was finally stepping into a new chapter. I wore a pale cream suit, hair neatly pinned, bright red lipstick. In the mirror, I saw a woman who wasn't broken anymore, but ready to reclaim what she deserved. When I got to the 35th floor lobby, I heard a voice through the glass-walled conference room, a voice I recognized. "We'll expand the design budget if the concept delivers. I want this apartment to feel like a space that embraces a woman the moment she walks in." I froze. It was him, the man from that night. I leaned closer, peeking through the glass. He stood at the front of the room, holding a remote, wearing a fitted navy shirt that hugged his frame. His eyes were sharp but calm. The other men nodded like students in a masterclass. Mark sat at the far end of the table, jaw tight. What the hell was going on? "Hi, are you here for the design position interview?" A receptionist's voice pulled me back to reality. I nodded, still stunned. "You're Alyssa Taylor, right? They're ready for you. The creative director and CEO will see you now." I swallowed hard. CEO? No way. But sure enough, when the door opened, it was him, the man from the club, standing up and smiling at me. "Alyssa." I froze. And Mark? He practically leapt from his chair. You know him?" he snapped. I didn't answer. And then the man said, calm as ever, "She dances beautifully. I was impressed from the first moment." I heard Mark grind his teeth. The man walked toward me and extended his hand. "James Lancaster, a pleasure seeing you again." My heart was racing, not from nerves, but from the storm building inside me. I had danced with my ex-husband's new CEO, and now I stood between them with no way out. The interview that followed was nothing short of surreal. James spoke to me like no one else existed. Mark kept butting in, trying to shake me. "She's never handled a major project," he said sharply. "Back when we were married, she only did freelance work for nail salons and friends' houses." James didn't flinch. I reviewed her portfolio. Her eye for light is exceptional. There's a visual intelligence there I rarely see in this field. I blushed. I didn't know if it was from the compliment or the way Mark's stare could have set the room on fire. When it was over, James walked me to the door and said softly, "I'll be in touch, very soon." I stepped out of that building on shaky legs, not because I feared rejection, but because I knew my life was about to explode. And it did. 2 days later, I got the offer. Creative Director, Luxury Projects Division, with a salary nearly double what I'd hoped for. I thought it was a reward. It wasn't. It was just the overture to the hell Mark was already composing. It started with a whisper I overheard near the office pantry. "Heard the new director's Mark's ex, spends her nights dancing at clubs to lure men, and now she's in charge? Talk about an entrance." I stood behind the door, gripping my coffee. My throat burned. Who told them? Who leaked what happened that night in the red dress, under pulsing lights, where I let myself feel alive again? The answer came 2 days later. I happened to walk past Mark's office. I wasn't trying to snoop, but my steps faltered when I heard the sounds inside, panting, gasping, the voice of his assistant, and Mark's voice, jagged and full of venom. "She's trash. Some washed-up ex-wife clinging to a temporary CEO, thinking she can parade in here as creative director." I froze. My spine went cold. "I'm not letting it happen," he growled. Get in touch with that tech guy you know, the one we met at the cafe near the office. I want him to doctor the club's security footage." I felt sick. Mark was behind it. He was the one orchestrating the smear campaign. He had someone pull footage, edit it, leak it. I pressed against the wall, trying to stay upright. Why? 7 years of marriage, and this is what he reduced me to? Why so much hate? Was it because I was rising again? Because James had noticed me? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Mark win this dirty little war. 3 weeks into the job, the air at Sterling and Morgan started to feel thick, like invisible smoke slipping through door cracks and side glances. Things had seemed smooth after onboarding, but deep down, I knew I was being watched. Rumors spread fast in this place. I didn't need ears to hear them. I could feel it in the looks people gave me behind my back, in the stifled laughs as I passed by, in the sly little jabs hidden in emails. Would the creative director like to pick fabrics suitable for club dresses? Or, worse, someone actually left a printed photo from the club, me dancing with James, in my desk drawer. My hands trembled as I held it. The message couldn't be clearer. Mark was behind it all. He couldn't stand that James respected me, couldn't handle seeing me in a new role, no longer the pitiful ex-wife. Mark, who had tossed me aside without explanation, was now doing everything he could to tear me down. But I wasn't going down that easily. I loved this job. I had the skills, the vision, and for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I threw myself into my first major assignment, designing the concept for a luxury apartment complex right in the heart of Venice Beach, the company's flagship project. I worked nearly non-stop, sketching every detail by hand, reworking lighting palettes for each floor. The portfolio I submitted to James had 3 full concepts: Desert Whisper, terracotta and burnt orange tones, softened with golden ambient lighting; warm, sultry, grounding; Lunar Bloom, misty white, platinum blue, mirrored accents, cool and ethereal, like moonlight over marble; Velvet Dusk, smoky lavender, charcoal, and deep mahogany wood, seductive, luxurious, unforgettable. I named each concept like a verse of poetry, because I knew I wasn't just designing, I was fighting for my work, for my name. The day of the presentation, I walked into the boardroom in a fitted black dress, hair pulled high, eyes unflinching. James sat at the head of the table, quiet, unreadable. Mark leaned back with his arms crossed, scowling like a man bracing for a storm. I started presenting, my voice steady, clear. The goal is to create a space where a woman doesn't just live, but feels cherished. A home that lets her embrace herself, her light, her scent, her colors, like a queen. Not for anyone else's comfort, but her own. I was speaking about myself, and I didn't flinch. James was silent for a long beat. Then he said, "I want all 3. We'll implement based on floor and buyer demographic." The room froze. Mark shot up from his seat. "James, you can't be serious about these flamboyant concepts. We need something safe, marketable." James turned to him, calm and sharp. I didn't hire her to play it safe. I said nothing, but inside, something bloomed like fireworks on New Year's Eve. The victory was short-lived. The very next day, the company's Instagram received an anonymous message, a video, edited footage of James and me dancing, the audio distorted, the lighting blurred, captioned, "From club to CEO, Alyssa's climb to the top." It went viral inside the company, shared to the media team, then the internal Slack. Everyone saw it. I knew it was Mark's doing. Not out of love, but because his ego couldn't stand the sight of me rising, of me looking radiant, being talented, admired, wanted. That afternoon, I sat alone in my office, the sunset light hanging heavy like a noose. I thought I'd cry, or call a lawyer, or resign before the gossip swallowed me whole. But then the door opened. James walked in, holding a tablet. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off. I know it was Mark. I looked up. We have enough evidence. The cafe's security camera caught him meeting with the guy who edited the video. And it looks like he's been sloppy in more ways than one. I stared at him, stunned. "What are you going to do?" He smiled, not cold, not sweet, the kind of smile you give when you know you hold the knife by the handle. Give it all back at the right moment. And in that second, I knew this game had only just begun. After that afternoon when James said he would return everything at the right time, I realized this wasn't just about me and Mark anymore. This had moved beyond divorce. This was a power reckoning, and whether I wanted it or not, I was right in the middle of it. In the days that followed, the office buzzed with a strange electricity. Mark stopped hiding in his private office and started showing up to meetings with a polished mask of professionalism. He acted like nothing had happened, still spoke, still led teams like the senior exec he was. But I saw it in his eyes every time James entered a room, a flicker, a flinch, a barely perceptible tremor. James, on the other hand, remained completely calm. He treated the whole video scandal like it had never happened. No names were mentioned, no public consequences. And that started to mess with my head. Why was James staying silent? Was he protecting Mark? Testing me? I hated the uncertainty. And more than anything, I hated how easily I was still emotionally dragged around by a man who once discarded me without so much as a backward glance. So I decided to find out the truth myself. That night, I dug through online records and niche industry blogs, tracing the paper trail of internal ownership changes. And there, buried in a barely trafficked financial post, I found it. Sterling and Morgan Group recently received a capital injection from Lancaster Capital, a well-known private firm out of New York, in exchange for 22% equity and full operational control for the next 5 years. Lancaster? James's last name. He wasn't just an interim CEO, he was the one holding the reins, which meant he could have taken Mark out at any time. So why hadn't he? I decided to confront him. It was late, past office hours. I waited for him by the elevator, heart pounding. "What's your plan?" I asked as soon as he stepped out. James paused, then smiled slightly. "A hello would be nice." I didn't smile back. "You said you had proof. You said you'd do something. But Mark's still here, still humiliating me, every day." He sighed and rubbed his temple. "I'm waiting for the right moment. In 3 weeks, we have the Singapore investor pitch. Venice Beach is our headline project. Mark's presenting the financials." I frowned. "And?" "If I pull him now, it'll cause internal chaos. Shareholders will panic. But if he crashes in front of them, if the numbers unravel live, they'll push him out themselves. I won't have to lift a finger. It'll be clean, transparent." I looked at him, frustrated. "And what about me? How long do I have to endure this?" He stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on my wrist. Warm, controlled. "You can endure it. You're stronger than you think, and I won't let you walk away damaged." A chill ran up my spine. I pulled my hand back, not from anger, but from instinct. I'd learned the hard way how empty promises could cut deeper than betrayal. James held my gaze. I'm not Mark." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. The next 3 weeks were suffocating in their silence. Mark and I barely exchanged words. James kept his distance, professional but never cold. I could feel him watching everything, setting the board, moving pieces only he could see. And then the day came. The pitch meeting was held on the 40th floor, sleek, sharp, and sterile in cold white-blue light. The Singapore team arrived in full. Among them was a middle-aged woman with razor-sharp eyes. I knew her, Vivian Chen, the kind of investor who could smell weakness from across the room and walk out within minutes. James opened with the company vision. I followed with the design overview. Everything ran like clockwork. Then it was Mark's turn. He stepped up with his tablet, pulled up the file. And it happened. Instead of clean profit graph, a jumbled spreadsheet filled the screen. Red lines, negative flows, overstated costs. Vivian narrowed her eyes. Are these figures accurate? Mark paled. I'll have to double check. From his seat, James calmly pressed his mic. I flagged those discrepancies with accounting 2 weeks ago. It seems Mark didn't follow through. The room went dead quiet. Vivian set her pen down. I don't invest in companies lacking internal clarity. Either you clean house or we withdraw. James turned to me. Alyssa, do you have the backup file? I nodded, plugged in the USB I'd prepared, and pulled up the version James and I had rebuilt. Clear, audited, convincing. Vivian nodded slowly. I'd like to continue discussions with her. Mark stood frozen, lips twitching, face drained. James spoke gently. Mark, you can step out now. HR will brief you on the transition process after the meeting. I watched him walk out, smaller somehow, shriveled, no longer the man who once tossed me aside like yesterday's mistake. And inside me, for the first time in a long, long while, was silence. The kind that feels like peace. Mark vanished from the company just a week after that disastrous investor pitch. No farewell email, no official announcement. He slipped away as quietly and cowardly as he had ended our marriage. As for me, the very next day, I became the most talked about name inside Sterling & Morgan. No longer the clubbing director, now I was the woman who saved the Singapore deal. The way people looked at me had shifted. No more smirks, just caution, respect, and from some, even fear. I started getting lunch invitations from people who used to whisper behind my back. Executive assistants asked how I liked my coffee so they could have it ready. The design team fell into sync without question. But I hadn't forgotten. Not the way Mark engineered it all to bring me down. Not the video. Not the sneers. Not the nights I cried in my office just to keep myself from walking away. I was tougher now, but my heart still tangled. I didn't know how to look at James. He had defended me, but I wasn't sure, was it for justice or for me? One late evening, as I was about to leave, I saw James alone in his office. The warm light cast across his dark brown hair and sharply drawn profile. He didn't look up, just said softly, "Come in." I hesitated, then stepped inside and closed the door. "Working?" I asked. "No," he replied. "Waiting for you." I swallowed. Waiting? Why? James looked up. "Because I want you to know everything I did wasn't out of revenge. It was because you deserve better. I didn't respond. He stood and walked toward me, slowly. He didn't touch me, but his presence was already there, warm on my skin. You're not a victim, Alyssa. You're someone who rose. Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you at the club? I stayed silent. He leaned in slightly, his voice low. I saw a woman who'd just been burned, and still she danced, still held her head high. That was unforgettable. My heart pounded. I didn't know if it was from fear or something far more vulnerable. He reached out, gently touched my cheek. His eyes weren't hungry, weren't demanding. They held desire and admiration. I closed my eyes, didn't pull away. Then he kissed me. Not urgent, not hungry, just steady, deliberate, a kiss that said, whatever came before, something softer had arrived now. I let it stay for a few moments. Then I eased back and looked at him. I need time, I said. James nodded, no resistance. I'll wait. I walked out, my heart walking the tightrope between healing and hesitation. I didn't know if I loved him yet, but for the first time, I knew I wasn't being diminished. The following week, I received an invitation to speak at the International Design Summit in Miami. The theme, Space and the Power of Women. James had nominated me. I accepted. The day before my flight, I found something on my desk, a leather notebook embossed with the words, "Only those who rise from fire can shape gold." No signature, but I knew who sent it. I smiled. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. A man's voice came through. "Alyssa, it's me, Mark." My grip on the phone tightened. My heart dipped. The ghost hadn't left yet. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold. There was a pause on the other end. Then he said, "I was wrong, but I can't lose everything. Can you help me start over?" I almost laughed. Where were you when I was drowning? When you let them humiliate me? When you disappeared and left me to bleed alone? And now that I've risen, now you ask for help? I exhaled slowly. Mark, not everyone gets to start over, especially not the ones who stepped on others to stay afloat. I hung up, and for the first time, I didn't tremble at the sound of his voice. For the first time, I was truly free. Miami greeted me with the scent of salt water in the breeze, sunlight soft as a sigh, and hotel lights glinting like glass at midnight. The Design Summit was held at a luxury resort on South Beach, where even the cocktails shimmered and every waiter's glance felt curated for the elite. But I didn't feel out of place. I wasn't the same Alyssa who once shrank into outdated office dresses. I walked in wearing a crisp white jumpsuit, hair in a high twist, lips a bold red. I wasn't here to be acknowledged. I was here to claim space. My talk was titled Design as a Declaration of Female Power. I spoke about being pushed to rock bottom, divorced, humiliated, smeared by a viral video, and still choosing not to abandon myself. The entire room fell silent. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke from experience, from scars, from the sleepless nights spent clutching design drafts like lifelines. And when I ended with, "Women don't need to be given power. We just need people to stop taking it away." The room rose to its feet in applause. I didn't cry. I smiled. After my talk, a rep from a prestigious Italian design firm invited me to collaborate. A renowned interiors publisher emailed about a book deal, and a female-founded startup collective in New York asked if I'd be open to mentoring. I barely recognized the woman I'd become. At last, what lived in my mind had spoken louder than anything Mark ever used to drown me out. That night, at the gala closing the summit, I stepped onto the top floor balcony with a glass of white wine in hand, the wind teasing through my hair. And then I heard a voice behind me, low and warm. "You were incredible up there." I turned. It was James. I laughed. "You following me now?" "No. I came because I wanted to see you win." I looked at him, this time without armor. I knew who I was now. I didn't need anyone to prove my worth. But I also wasn't afraid of being loved, not if it came gently, respectfully. He stepped closer, fingers brushing mine around the wineglass. "I want to be there while you rise," he said. "Not to lead, just to walk beside you." I didn't answer. I looked down at the coastline lit up like a jeweled ribbon, the waves rolling in like reminders. Nothing lasts forever. Not pain, not glory. What endures is how we move through it. Then I turned, leaned in, and kissed him first. This time, not as a test, as a choice. 3 weeks later, I was officially named Vice President of Creative Development, the youngest in Sterling and Morgan's history. The office buzzed. People who once mocked me now scribbled down every word I said in meetings. I stayed composed. I didn't lash out. I let my success speak for me. As for Mark, I didn't care where he was or what he was doing. Maybe he'd landed a smaller job. Maybe he was plotting some pathetic revenge. But none of it mattered anymore. That chapter was closed. One afternoon, while sorting files in the office, I came across a handwritten letter tucked in the drawer James used back when he was interim CEO. Cream-colored paper, strong pen strokes. "You don't have to forgive the world for what it did to you. Just don't let it make you cruel. You are your own last light. Jay." I held it in my hand and smiled. I didn't need anyone to guide me anymore. I was the light. That night, James made dinner at his new apartment, the one I'd helped design the lighting for. Candles flickered, wine breathed. Golden light bathed the space like an unspoken jazz melody. "I used to think I wasn't right for someone like you," he said as we sat on the floor, backs against the couch. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're strong, and I used to be someone who had to control everything. But you," he looked at me, "you taught me how to step back, to watch, and to trust." I set my glass down, met his gaze. "You don't need to control me," I said. "Just don't destroy me." He nodded slowly. "No one can destroy you anymore." We didn't need more words. I let the warm light kiss my skin. I let his lips meet mine again, not in hunger, but in the quiet fusion of two people once shattered, now finding something whole. And in that moment, I knew I had come back to life. 3 months after the Miami summit, my face appeared on the cover of Design Power Quarterly under the headline, "Alyssa Taylor, the woman who turned shame into a creative empire." I didn't cry when I held that magazine. I just remembered that moment in front of the mirror in the red dress. That night, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. Who would have thought that very fall would become the springboard that launched me higher than I ever imagined? After the success of the Singapore partnership, Sterling and Morgan secured 2 more major contracts, Dubai and Tokyo. The Venice Beach project became a new icon for feminist interior design, and suddenly the press was calling me the queen of spatial rebirth. Mark? A little bird from HR told me he's now a site supervisor for a mid-tier construction company in East San Diego. No private office, no luxury car, no power, and no me. One quiet weekend afternoon, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The sender's name simply read, M. The message was short. "I used to think you were just a forgettable part of my past, but now, every time I hear your name, I find myself staring into a mirror, and I can't look myself in the eye." I didn't reply. I didn't feel satisfaction, just release. Like the person who once dragged me into the mud had finally been forced to look at the dirt clinging to his own hands. I didn't need revenge anymore, because I'd already won. Beautifully. That evening, I sat beside James at a fundraising gala for women entrepreneurs. He wore a sleek gray suit. I was in a backless black gown. We didn't cling to each other for validation. We were simply at peace. The event host invited me to speak. I stepped up to the stage, mic in hand, hundreds of eyes watching. I didn't open with accolades. I didn't lead with my title. I started with pain. 3 years ago, I was divorced by the man I loved. No explanation. I lost my job. I was ridiculed. I became a punchline for dancing with a stranger in a club. A low wave of murmurs rippled through the room. I smiled gently and looked at James. He gave a quiet nod. But in that very moment, where I was labeled cheap, I found the beginning of my real worth. Because I didn't stop dancing. I didn't stop walking. I didn't stop living. Silence fell across the room. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to not let go of yourself. No matter who laughs, no matter who tries to push you down, if you're still standing, you haven't lost. Afterward, James and I strolled along the harbor. The night air was soft, the breeze cool. He held my hand, for the first time, firmly. "What do you think will become of us?" I asked. "What do you want to become of us?" I thought for a moment. I don't need promises. I just need someone who won't be afraid of the light I carry. James smiled. "I've already been burned by it, but I don't want to leave." I stopped and turned to face him. "Then let's build a new space together, one where no one's silenced, no one's small, where broken things don't mean the end, just the start of something different." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "Where do we begin?" I grinned. "By buying that penthouse on the 45th floor across the street. I want to redesign the whole damn thing." "What style?" he asked, half joking. I turned toward the skyline, eyes gleaming. "Style? Let the X watch closely." Months later, once the interior was finished, I stood alone inside the glass-capped room. Golden light poured down onto the marble floor, the entire city of Los Angeles stretching out beneath me. I stood there in a brand new red dress, wine swirling in my glass. No music, no club lights. I danced, by myself. This time, not to forget anyone, but to celebrate the woman I had become.